It's time for the North Idaho Prepcast on IdahoSports.com.
That's right. Welcome in another edition of the North Idaho Prepcast on IdahoSports.com, breaking down District 1 and 2 activities throughout the state of Idaho, week in, week out. My name is Brandon Baney. We are joined by our North Idaho resident expert, Ryan Scaggs, all bundled up. What's up, Scaggs?
Not much. It's cold. Yeah, it's going to be colder tonight too. I think it's like minus 13 is the expected low coming up, and it's supposed to have like a minus 30 wind chill on Wednesday night or Thursday. So yeah, not to play weather or anything like that, but it's brutal. And we're not on Christmas break yet either, so there's frustration there too.
Yes, Christmas break for the local schools not happening until Friday. Well,
yeah, but if you play
Saturday.
basketball, if you play basketball though, you get out early. So
yes, a lot of basketball teams are on the road for holiday tournaments, and we will get to all of that momentarily.
No bitterness on my part. Let's put it that, right.
You're a frustrated parent, I think.
Yeah, no, let's just say the kids are ready for Christmas break. Yeah, the insanity is ensuing in full swing.
Right. Well, as our listeners know, I'm headed your way soon to move permanently to Coeur d'Alene. But for now, I'm still in Pocatello. Pocatello schools got out last Friday. Like they're off now. They're off this week. They're off next week.
Go back what, the 4th?
Yeah, 3rd or 4th, I think. So
okay,
something like that. But it's this cold snap is really affecting East Idaho, North Idaho. Similarly, Sunday, right outside our front door, we have steps and a little walk, and it was just like ice. So I bought a big bag of the Roadrunner ice melt,
the Costco ice melt,
and laid it down, but it was so cold that as quickly as it melted away, it just refroze. So it's
you gotta get the blue stuff, I guess, is what I've heard works best in cold. That's what I bought this last time. It's been working, but like it works to like minus 13 or something like that. So
I fell for the marketing scam of the Roadrunner from Looney Tunes. He'd never steer me wrong. It's literally Roadrunner ice melt. So
don't buy the Coyote one.
Right.
It'll go poorly for you.
Yeah, I kind of feel like Wile E. Coyote a little bit. So
yeah. Acme ice melt, definitely 0 stars.
Acme ice melt. All right. Okay, so you can consume this podcast a couple of different ways: audio only at IdahoSports.com or wherever you download your podcasts. Video version of this as well at the IdahoSports.com YouTube channel or Facebook page. The biggest story to come out of North Idaho sports over the past week, there were a couple, but to me, the biggest story, Ryan, was the annual Tri-State Wrestling Meet. The premier programs from Washington, North Idaho, Montana, all converging upon Coeur d'Alene for a pretty spectacular weekend of wrestling.
Yeah, it was pretty outstanding, and to see the finish. I mean, Ording had kind of a stranglehold in the points going into the second day. We knew Flathead was going to make a run there. Great team out of Montana, out of Kalispell. Great program. They ended up winning the team title. Post Falls came in second, and I was impressed with Post Falls the way they showed up. That lineup, it definitely bodes well for tournament scoring, and they were the top Idaho team. Obviously, they beat defending state champ in Washington and Ording. They beat Meade, which is another great program. They beat LeGrand out of Oregon, which is another premier program in the state of Oregon. So you look at them. I mean, they were the only team to finish in the top 10 from the state of Idaho. But I mean, you had decent finishes, obviously, from some of the smaller schools. Lewiston got quite a bit out of their lineup, and Kellogg finished in the top 25, which was pretty impressive for them to have that type of finish. But yeah, it was just a great tournament. I mean, you had championships. Ryder Seguin from Post Falls, Gentry Smith, and Trevor Miller all got championships from Tri-State, so they came home with the hardware for the Trojans, and a great tournament from them. I mean, I was super impressed with Gentry Smith and what he was able to do in that bracket. I mean, that's a pretty tough weight class too, that he ended up winning the title at 195 pounds. And he beat Liljenquist from Mount Spokane, who's a great wrestler, a state qualifier for him. And so that was a great win for them. And then obviously Trevor Miller getting the pin in the second round for the championship there for the Trojans. It's a great showing. And I think what was more impressive was some of the guys that showed up in like the 3rd and 4th place matches. Like you got a 3rd place finish from Andrew Duke from Sandpoint. Great showing for him. Hoyt Haas from Lewiston finished 3rd. I know he was wanting the title, but he defeated a really good wrestler, Nathan Curry from Tahoma, which is over outside of the Seattle area in the eastern King County. I mean, Tyson Barnhart took 4th at 132 pounds. Dax Larson got 4th at 138, who lost to a really good wrestler from Pullman. So, yeah, there's just some great finishes. Trey Smith was in the top 4, as well as Seth Martin got 4th place for Post Falls. John Rudabaugh was 4th place. So, like, really where Post Falls made their hay was, they got into those blood rounds, and they ended up getting the guys into the medals, which was a huge boost for their team score. But also Preston Jeffs from Lakeland took 4th at heavyweight as well, and a great showing. And also Robert Storm lost a heartbreaker in the championship match from Lewiston. So that was the Idaho schools, North Idaho schools look pretty great. And I think the bell cow obviously is Post Falls this year.
Yeah. Okay. So as a wrestling novice, still in wrestling fans, friendly reminder, we have a standalone wrestling podcast each week during wrestling season here on IdahoSports.com. It is called the Matt Chat Prepcast. You can search for that in your favorite podcast catcher. We have a page for it on our site, IdahoSports.com. If you want to watch the video of it, we do it live. We do the show live. Usually it's every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Pacific time, but this week it's going to be Wednesday night because tonight, Ryan, I have to go broadcast a basketball game. So
good reason.
Between Shelley and Skyline, which nobody cares about in North Idaho. So anyways, tomorrow night, Wednesday night, 7:00 Pacific time, we'll go live on the IdahoSports.com YouTube channel, Facebook page, and Twitter account with our Matt Chat Prepcast. So as a wrestling novice, I'm trying to sound smarter when it comes to my wrestling game. Explain to me real quick, what are the blood rounds?
So blood rounds are the rounds to get into your placing matches. So it's the consolation round. Lose and go home. You win, you're going for hardware. So it's those later rounds where you've lost in the championship rounds. You get knocked down. It's usually like you come out of like the semifinals or the quarterfinals, and you end up on the bottom half of the bracket. And it's those guys that just really scrap hard because there's team points attached to finishing. So like if you get like finishing placing points, it can really lift your team score. So you get into what it's called the blood rounds. It makes a huge difference for team titles. And that's where, a lot of state championships in years past have been won and lost in the blood rounds, which I think is why so many people get really excited for those first couple rounds of the day or the last round of the night at the state tournament, is because sometimes that tends to be your best matches because you get those guys that just refuse to go home and they want to take home some hardware and keep their season going.
Definitely. And it's the top, is it the top 6 or the top 8 placers?
So the top 8 at Tri-State place. Yeah. So
yeah.
They place through 8.
Okay. So yes, that was a good synopsis of what happened at Tri-State. There were 2 other wrestling notes I wanted to touch on. First of all, the first annual Andrew Beck Memorial Tournament was held over the weekend in Grangeville, of course. Andrew Beck, longtime wrestling coach, really a pioneer for girls wrestling in the state of Idaho. Tragically, his life cut short way too early, passed away earlier this fall. So this was a nice tribute to him, a lasting legacy, if you will. Clearwater Valley won the team title at the Andrew Beck Memorial Tournament. Doesn't really surprise me because in terms of smaller schools, and this was a smaller school competition, Lewiston sent their JV, but Clearwater Valley is pretty good in terms of team competition.
Oh yeah, no, them and I look at them and I think one team that's getting overlooked a little bit is Kellogg in the 2As. I think they're both going to have great showings, especially as the season progresses. Obviously, another kid to watch is going to be Mateus McLean from Priest River. Now that they went down to 2A. He could be challenging for a state championship as well. The Spartans have a decent lineup. So there's going to be teams that move from 3A to 2A for Kellogg and Priest River could bode really well for both those programs at the state tournament this year. But there's some quality kids down at the lower levels. So you look at Potlatch, they always have a roster full of meat grinders too. And, they got a couple hammers in there at 160 pounds. And, so that the smaller schools may not bring a full lineup necessarily, but the guys that they bring are just high quality.
Yeah, and that's the key when you get to state is New Plymouth, Prairie are kind of the two standard bearers for statewide competition. They have the numbers. Can the teams from the north get enough quality points to offset that? That's what makes state wrestling so fun to watch.
Yeah, you got to have champs to make that run. If you're going to surmount the numbers difference, you've got to be able to bring home the golds and the silvers.
Definitely. And then the last wrestling note I wanted to touch on was we also did have the Reno Tournament of Champions down in Reno, Nevada. This was for the elite wrestlers. And, it was a handful of competitors going around really the top teams, right?
Yeah.
Blackfoot went there. Coeur d'Alene went there. Alyssa Randalls of Coeur d'Alene wins the 126-pound championship.
Yeah,
beating a girl from Nevada.
She's legit. Yeah, she's legit, and that's a great tournament. That tournament's been around, longer than I have, and it's always been a very high quality affair. And the teams, if you get invited to the TOC down there, that's a big time event. My high school went a few times. Back in the day, I don't want to date myself or anything, but you can go down there and compete and win a championship. That's really saying something. And Alyssa Randalls is a phenomenal wrestler. Obviously, the pedigree there with her dad, who's a principal at Coeur d'Alene High School, but her brother, he's wrestling collegiately as well. So there's her uncle was my high school coach. So yeah, there's a definite pedigree there in that family that there's a lot of pride that's taken in wrestling.
Yeah, back in 2014 when you were down there competing at the TOC, right, Ryan?
2014. My 20-year high school reunions this year.
That's funny.
Okay. 2014, I'll be coaching. But yeah, go ahead. If you think I'm that young, I'll take it. Yeah.
You're right.
You're only as old as you feel, right?
I was trying to give you a little layup there, and instead
I may act immature, but
instead you took the most difficult shot there is, the deep two.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay. Speaking of deep twos, basketball highlights from the past week. We're not going to spend a ton of time talking about them because we spent so much time talking about them last week, but boy, the Lake City boys just continue to roll. They went over to the Curtis Winter Classic and ran roughshod through everybody. Washington and Oregon schools were there. Post Falls was also there competing. And even though it didn't go the way the Trojans wanted it to, they're going to be a lot better for it. They had some tight games. They had an overtime loss. So Post Falls is going to come out of this thing really battle tested. But the story is Lake City. They beat the hosts from Curtis in the championship by a score of 77-65. So it really wasn't even close. And for fans that may not know, what type of win is that? What kind of program is Curtis, Washington?
Curtis is generally a pretty decent program. In that conference, you play any of the city schools over on the west side, you generally have, they're all, let's just put, a 4A school in Washington is the equivalent of 5A in Idaho. And I'd actually say the enrollment's a little bit elevated in Washington. You're looking generally most 4A schools in the state of Washington on that side of the state are all over 2,000 kids. It's a program has a history of having a pretty successful basketball program. So for Lake City to win over Curtis in that tournament's big. That's a huge win for the T-Wolves. And if you've been living under a rock, they're really stinking good this year. And that lineup, they got production all the way through it. And it doesn't surprise me that they won that tournament just because they've really kind of changed. We talked about it, like we said, in depth last week, but they've changed how they approach. And I just look at the unselfishness in that lineup. And then they just played more physical. And now that they're playing that kind of brand of basketball, they're feasting on the turnovers too, on the defensive end, getting those transition buckets on offense, coming back the other way. And it's making for an exciting season, and it's setting up to be a really, could be a really special run for that Lake City team.
Yeah, and so Curtis High is the defending 4A champs in Washington.
They're really good.
A 4A school in Washington, is that like a 5A school in Idaho?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I would say, yeah, it's 5A, but it's like the top half of 5A. So it would be the equivalent enrollment-wise. It would be, you're looking at like the Timberlines, the Mountain Views, the I guess Post Falls would be up there on the enrollment scale in the state of Idaho, like the Madisons, those type of schools that are on the bigger end of 5A. That's 4A in Washington. Because 3A is, I want to say 3A in Washington is 1,200 and up for enrollment size. So you're looking like 1,200 to 1,600 is 3A, or, it's a really small kind of band, but 3A and 4A are pretty similar in size, but 4A is the one that's kind of got the unlimited cap on it.
For sure. So Curtis is the defending team champ, and then they've got a kid that's legit. Point guard Zoom Diallo. He's being recruited by Gonzaga, UCLA, Arizona. Really,
Arizona's got a really good shot at getting him too. But yeah, he's going to be a legit player. He's a Pac-12 play. Yeah, he's legit.
Well, as a UCLA fan, I'll give the pitch right here that, hey, you want to go play in the league, you got to be able to defend, and you're going to learn how to defend under Mick Cronin at UCLA. So just saying, if you want to brush up
you got
on
like Johnny Juzang. I mean, like there's been some good guards that have gone through at UCLA. So yeah. I mean, yeah, there's a pedigree that's set up. I mean, obviously Gonzaga's Gonzaga, and you can kind of walk into any gym in the Pacific Northwest, and they're going to know who you are. But yeah, he's a legit recruit for a reason. But I'm telling you, Colton Mitchell, man, I'm telling you, like, I don't know who's doing the ratings and everything on that kid, but there are some serious people sleeping on Colton Mitchell. And if he's going to end up staying at ISU, they got an absolute freaking steal picking up Colton.
Yeah, for sure. It's going to be a lot of fun to continue to chart this Lake City team as they maneuver through their season. But man, cleaning up at the Curtis Winter Classic over there in Tacoma, pretty outstanding performance for sure. So
and you got Lapway coming up with a big game too, and gosh, there's some big tournaments coming up through the break too.
Yeah, the annual La Vista tournament coming up in Lewiston, kind of the highlight there. Moscow, Lewiston, Prairie, Lapway are all going to be there competing. A lot of the District 1 schools are kind of competing in tournaments this week, and we'll get to that in a second. Other quick highlights from the weekend. We saw the Sandpoint girls take care of business against Lewiston pretty convincingly, 67-40. The Sandpoint girls. I don't know.
I told you both. I think both Bulldog teams are going to be the ones that take the 4A berth to state from the north. I said that at the beginning, and I'm still standing by it right now.
Okay, and then the Sandpoint boys didn't have as good of a time playing Lewiston, right? They fall 70-37, but. It's a high octane Lewiston team for sure.
That Lewiston team's underrated. There people are sleeping on them a little bit. I think that Lewiston team's pretty dang good.
Yeah, I think we kind of look at Lake City, Coeur d'Alene as the two top teams, but yeah, Lewiston's right there too for sure. You had the annual border battle. Pullman and Moscow played each other. Was a draw.
Pullman's good.
Yeah. Yeah, the
Pullman's really good. They beat Lewiston last week too, so yeah. Don't feel bad if you're Moscow.
Yeah, the Pullman boys won pretty handily, but the Moscow girls got a win, which is good.
Yeah.
So,
no, and going back to that Pullman team, it's a good test because you look at they played some of the North Idaho teams. That's a state caliber team. Craig Brantner is the coach at Pullman for the Greyhounds, and he does a great job. And he's won multiple state titles and state runner ups with that program. So to play that team tough, if you're in those games, that's saying something, that if you're able to play and pace yourself with that team, because this is their year. I think this is the year that, they're looking at this group of kids that they could really make some noise in the state tournament with that Pullman lineup. So it's Lewiston to lose to them and Moscow to lose to them. It's not really nothing to be too disappointed in yourself in.
Right.
I'm giving you a cross state line insight, but yeah.
No, that's why I love picking your brain about this, because the Washington side of it really well. So it gives me a good gauge on, how impressive was that. So yes.
Yeah, and you'll get Clarkston at the Avista tournament too, which is another 2A team that's pretty competitive. So and then you get Pendleton. Oregon's going to be there at that tournament as well. So there's some decent teams. I think it's a little bit more balanced than it's been in years past. I don't think you're necessarily, the premier programs that are there, obviously Lapway and Lewiston on the boys side, I look at that. But if you got Prairie and Lapway on the girls side, and there's some good competition between the two of them. Obviously we saw that, a couple weeks ago, but Prairie girls. I mean, I'm still picking them to win the White Pine, but some people might sneeze at me a little bit. But yeah, no, there's some good games going on. Lapway's taking on Baker City on boys basketball too. So yeah, there's a lot to happen. There's a lot to munch on the next couple weeks of hoops, because I think we'll have a game here in North Idaho before we do the next Prepcast as well.
Yes, we definitely will. So yes, is Baker, I believe.
You've completely froze up, or I froze up. I don't know what happened.
So West and I'm not sure if it's similar to that. It's going to be at Treasure Valley Community College in Ontario, or Lapway and Baker from Nampa down in the Treasure Valley, and they are taking on another Oregon opponent who escapes me at this point. I can't remember who it is, but anyways, I think the best game is going to be the first game. I'll tell you that. So that'll be on Wednesday night.
I don't know what happened on my end, but like you froze up super bad there. So I only caught like the back half of that.
Oh no.
I don't know if it was on my end or on your end.
Okay. Maybe I've got too many tabs open. Okay. Now my computer's chiming a billion times. Okay. Yeah, my computer is screaming for help. Quiet you. All right. I was talking about.
Usually it's me with the problem, so I'm glad it's not me this time.
Oh my gosh. There's just a train of error messages popping up on my computer right now. Okay. I was talking about how Lapway is going to play in this Pacific Northwest Showcase event. I'm not sure if it's a Nike event like it was at NIC, but they're going to play Baker High, the Baker Bulldogs. They're, I believe, the two-time defending champions in their classification in Oregon. That's the first game Wednesday night, and then Valley View will tip off against another Oregon opponent in the second game. I think that Lapway Baker game is going to be the best game, though. The first game.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, you got two I think blue chip programs from respective states. That's going to be a really great game. I like that matchup, and I like the chance that Coach Eastman gets to go play another high quality, high caliber opponent, especially after losing that game that they were supposed to play against Linden. Being able to have another one before Christmas, and then that Avista tournament obviously is going to bode well, especially for the Max Preps ratings.
Yes. Yeah, that'll help them certainly as they continue to pile up the wins, right? They've got the longest winning streak in the state of Idaho. I think it's top 25 still nationally as well. So
yeah. I mean, maybe they'll be the unanimous number one this week in the next coaches poll, as opposed to Victory Charter getting a vote. Sorry, right. I can't say that without laughing, but that's no offense to Victory Charter, but I don't know how they got a number one vote over Lapway. But all right, you do you.
Yeah, it's probably the Victory coach voting for his own team. I don't know. That happens sometimes in our coaches polls.
Yeah.
Anyways, you can see those coaches polls on the homepage at IdahoSports.com. All right, basketball that's taking place this week. We've got a lot of teams that are on the road competing in various tournaments. Let's start on the girls' side because there's more girls' action. Post Falls is at the Gisa Winter Shootout in East Wenatchee, Washington. Coeur d'Alene is at the Tarkanian Classic in Las Vegas. I think they actually get to play in Orleans Arena today. As we're recording this, they'll play at like 4:30 this afternoon, which is pretty cool. I mean, that's where like the Pac-12 tournament is held every year, is at the Orleans Arena. So that's pretty cool. And then
the WCC tournament is held there. The Pac-12 is at the T-Mobile Arena, which is the big one down on the Strip. But
right, yes, you're right.
Yeah.
UCLA
Orleans is where they host the WCC tournament every year.
Yes, UCLA played there last year as part of the. I don't even remember, but they played Gonzaga at the Orleans Arena. That's what's stuck in my head. Okay, so and then you've got Lake City at the Nike Tournament of Champions in Phoenix, Arizona. And how about this? All three teams go 3-0 yesterday. Like there was any doubt, right?
Yeah.
This is pretty. To me, the most impressive win, just by sheer margin of victory, was Post Falls. They beat Wenatchee 65-15, Scaggs.
So that Post Falls girls team is good. I mean, Wenatchee, has their issues, but they're you know, they're a decent sized school in the state of Washington. So I mean, you're getting a victory like that over any school with over 1,500 kids. That's impressive, and it's in the margin of victory. That Trojans lineup is good. I think that they play a really, really good brand of team basketball. Obviously, Capri Sims is showing out, and she earned her National Signing Day commitment to Central Washington. But there's some other contributors in that lineup that really show up for our colleague coach, and he's doing a great job. I think in his first year, he's really showing up and doing a really quality job with that program.
Yeah, definitely. The leading scorer last night was Mackenzie Mitley, and she's a sophomore. In his quote to the Coeur d'Alene Press, our IdahoSports.com colleague and the Post Falls girls basketball coach Brian Hall, he said, "We still haven't played our best game yet, and we still won by 50."
And it's funny, it's like Post Falls, they're like one of those teams. Oh, they're perennially young, right? They always have like these youngsters that show up in their lineup, and there's like, we're always young, and it's like we don't understand how. It's like, well, does it matter at this point? You're really good, so you can be young and still be successful.
Yeah, I mean, it's just nuts. All right, Lake City. Let's talk about them next. They went and played Linwood, California, and won again pretty convincingly, 70-51. The final. It was Sophia Zufelt leading the way with 24 points in the victory, and now they play Lakeside, which is from Seattle. They'll play them today at 3:30. So this will be
usually a pretty good team. Yeah, that's usually a pretty good program on the 4A program for over in the West Side. Yeah, no, that's going to be a good game.
Yeah, that's going to be a really good test for Coach Anderson and the Timberwolves. So,
well, I mean, Sophia's a solid. I mean, she's been shooting the lights out, especially from the perimeter. I know she's really worked on her long range game, and she's a pretty dynamic guard for the T-Wolves. And then obviously you've got, the wing Avery Waddington plays super well for them as well. And I mean, that lineup, there's any given night somebody's going to go off for 20 and just get their buckets. So that's a good test. I think that's going to be a great game for them, and we'll see what happens. I think the T-Wolves, both boys and girls have been looking super tough this year, so it could be a decent winter sports season for the Coeur d'Alene schools, especially Coeur d'Alene High School is looking pretty good lately too.
Yes, Zufelt made 5 3-pointers yesterday in the win, so yeah, pretty epic stuff there. And then Coeur d'Alene played at the Tarkanian Classic. They played Fountain Fort Carson, Colorado, and won 46-29. They will play at the Orleans Arena today, as I said, against Vanden High from California. So
I know nothing about California basketball, so good luck to the Vikings.
Yeah,
I know Coach Simons. She likes her team, and she's got some ballers on that team too. So, including her own daughter. But yeah, that lineup, they're looking good, and that, I mean, like I said, this IEL schedule is going to be absolutely bananas, night in and night out when they start league play.
Yeah, Tegan Colvin led the way with 17 points in the win yesterday for Coeur d'Alene. It's going to be a battle of Vikings, Ryan. It's the Vanden Vikings from Fairfield, California. They're 7-4 on the season, and they won their first round game at the Tarkanian Classic by 10, 67-57 over. And this just sounds like one of those basketball academies. This is from Nevada. They beat Democracy Prep Agassiz Campus.
It's like, what was the Bishop Sycamore? The fake school. They're playing next, and then they're going to play. Are they going to play ITT Tech next week?
Yeah, right. Hey, speaking of ITT Tech, not too far away, but shout out to Parker Pettit, Sandpoint quarterback, for signing with MIT. Yeah,
dude, yeah. No, Parker, and he's a great kid. He's got great parents too. They obviously listen to the Prepcast a lot, but yeah, to get an academic ride to MIT. I mean, obviously we knew he's a 4.3 GPA kid, 1520 on his SAT, just a brilliant kid, but a good kid. Yeah, signed letter of intent to go to MIT, and congratulations to him. That's awesome. And I know that he was trying to field offers, but he looked long term. And you get a degree from MIT as an engineer, you're going to be setting yourself up for success later in life. And football's just a game. He still gets to play it, but at the same time, he gets to study at one of the top universities in the world. So that's saying something.
That's awesome, and he's destined for big and bright things post.
Yeah.
Education, career-wise. I mean,
my brother-in-law's an engineer, and I've already told him to hire him. So
there you go. Yeah,
he's like, I don't know if I could afford him if he's going to MIT, but yeah.
Well, that works out pretty well. So yeah, we were talking about the Coeur d'Alene girls. They beat Fountain Fort Carson 46-29. I have a story about Fountain Fort Carson. So a couple years ago, Ryan, I lived in Nebraska. I lived in this town called Scottsbluff, Nebraska. There was a junior college there. Western Nebraska Community College, and I was basically the voice of the JUCO. All the sports. I did the play-by-play on the radio for all of them, and I traveled with the team. And so I first got there in like the start of the new year, January. So the season had already started. So I'm kind of this new guy awkwardly trying to like find my footing while the team is in the middle of the season. The women's basketball coach was like a legend. He's got like over 600 career wins, but like a real grade A-hole. Yeah. And he did one of those Vince Lombardi things where like I asked him, I'm like, hey, what time is the bus leaving? Because I travel with the team. And he goes, oh yeah, the bus is going to leave at 10:30. Okay. Well, the bus left at 10:25 as I was pulling into the parking lot. Oh, you know what? If you're not 5 minutes early, you're late. So I had to drive myself. The game was in Colorado. I had to drive myself and the way it works is kind of like the Pac-12. You'll play a game Friday and then you'll play a game Saturday. And so they were playing one night in one Colorado town, and then the next night, a couple hours away, still in Colorado. So I had to drive myself. I get there, do the game. I realized that I forgot to pack my phone charger for the car. So my phone was almost dead. It's the middle of the night. I'm in rural Colorado where there's like nothing but like empty fields around. I'm trying to like use my GPS, but at the same time, like preserve my battery. And so finally, I'm like, I'm just going to have to stop at the next town I get to. I'm going to have to stop for the night, get a hotel, and charge my phone and regroup in the morning and figure out where the heck I am and where I'm going. The town I stopped in, Fountain Fort Carson. So there you go. That brings it all back to what we were discussing currently. So anyways.
That's a good story.
There's not much going on at Fountain Fort Carson, let me tell you. So
obviously there's basketball at least.
Yeah. Hey, if you're good enough to go to the Tarkanian Classic, then you're probably doing all right. Okay. Let's talk about some other basketball highlights from the non-5A division. Over the weekend, Priest River hosted the Santa Shootout. It might be my favorite holiday-themed tournament name. We talked about this last week.
I think that's a Mel Gibson movie, isn't it?
I have no idea. Is it?
There's a new movie that he did where he like Santa like turns heel and ends up like killing people, and I don't know. I saw the previews of it. You'll have to look it up. It looks terrible, but also looks like a movie that I might need to watch.
Okay, so here's the 2020. It's called Fat Man.
Yes, there it is, Fat Man.
And here's the description. A rowdy, unorthodox Santa Claus is fighting to save his declining business.
And I think it's because he gave like a lump of coal to a kid, and the kid turned into like this villain. Like that was what set him off. And so he's under attack by a villainous child that grew up to hate the Fat Man.
Speaking of like
Santa Shootout. Sorry, that's a crazy tangent, but yes, go ahead.
No, I'm gonna go even further. Have you seen the previews for this movie that came out this year? That came out like a month ago. It was called Violent Night. I only know this because they showed the preview for it like 50 billion times during NFL games on Sundays. But it's just like this, it's almost like Die Hard, but it's like with Santa Claus.
Or it's like John Wick, but it's Santa.
Yeah, basically. And like it's like the cheesiest lines in the trailer. It's just like he's on the phone talking to like this little girl.
Deck the halls.
Yeah, he's like, you tell him Santa Claus is coming to town.
There's other ones that I won't say on this Prepcast that for purposes of keeping my job. So
Maybe we do a spin-off podcast where we review terrible movies.
I'm in. Sign me up. Zardoz, number 1 on the list. That is a Mount Rushmore bad movie. If you've never seen it, don't.
Oh, man,
I don't know.
We've gone way off the rails here, but that's fine because
think Sean Connery in a Speedo the entire movie.
Wow. That's pretty epic. So
anyway, Santa Shootout.
Santa Shootout. Priest River hosts the Santa Shootout. There's a boys competition and a girls competition. Little 4-team tournament. It was Priest River. It was Clark Fork. It was Genesis Prep, and it was North Idaho Christian, which is not an IHSAA school, but still a pretty good school. They play in the private.
It would be competitive at 1A, yeah, D2, absolutely.
Yeah. So on the girls' side, we ended up with a championship matchup of it was North Idaho Christian and Clark Fork, and the Royals of North Idaho Christian win pretty easily, 50-20. So Clark Fork, the Wampus Cats, take second place there. And then in the boys competition in our championship, we had again North Idaho Christian and Clark Fork. And again, that was the third place game. Clark Fork lost in overtime 74-65. And then in the championship, we had Priest River and Genesis Prep, and the Spartans defeat the Jaguars 52-39. So congrats to North Idaho Christian girls. Priest River boys, your Santa Shootout champs.
Yeah, kind of I don't want to say a mishmash of teams, but definitely not the teams that I would expect to see, in a December tournament. I mean, I guess it's kind of like a mixture of who's available, and North Idaho Christian, I think, needs to look at going one to be an IHSA school, but I mean, they play in that Mountain Christian League and they pretty much dominate it most years. Which, if you're not familiar with that in this area, it's a mixture of Washington and Idaho private Christian schools. But North Idaho Christian could compete at the 1A D2 level. They would be pretty competitive for both programs, especially on the boys side. I know of a few kids that are on that team that can play ball, and some of them tend to leak over to other schools like Genesis Prep. Some will end up on the JV team at Lake City or Coeur d'Alene, but I think the wins there for both those programs is pretty cool. I mean, especially you get to see teams that don't necessarily play in league play, show up and be competitive in a tournament, especially against the 2A program in Priest River. Pretty good for them, and state qualifier obviously in Clark Fork. So that's a good job for both those teams.
Definitely. Yeah, there's a number of those private Christian schools up there. There's Immaculate Conception Academy. There's a new one that just opened this year, Coeur de Christ Academy. Yeah. You heard about this one?
No, there's a few of them. There's North Idaho Christian, there's Christian Center School, Summit Academy. There's a bunch. There's a bunch of private schools up here that probably would be pretty competitive. You could see it like you do kind of down south with a lot of those charter schools, but I mean, we saw it with St. John Bosco shows up and they're competitive. So, I mean, it wouldn't be out of the stretch of imagination that some of these schools can play.
Yeah, Coeur de Christ, it's a brand new academy. It just opened this fall. The principal, headmaster, whatever you want to call it, athletic director is Kellen Clemens, the former Oregon Duck and NFL quarterback. So
really?
Yes.
There's a Lake City football position open that he could apply for.
There is. Yes. Coach Brian Fulp did resign from the Lake City position. I mean, it's just,
I didn't know he was in the area. That's interesting. Yeah.
Yes. And with Coach Fulp, he did a great job at Lake City. You can't just look at the wins and losses because think about this league the last couple of years. Coeur d'Alene, Post Falls, Lewiston, all playoff caliber teams. So it's easy to get lost in the wash as the fourth team in a 4-team league and in a lot of sports. And it just so happened Lake City was the fourth in football, but
and it's a program that historically we look at the success that had been had previously in the 2000s and the early part of the decades there. I mean, it's a school you can go and win. Obviously you're seeing a lot of the kids now that come out of middle school are opting, if they're going to play football, they tend to opt to Coeur d'Alene. And then a lot of the kids that want to play basketball, some of them tend to up to Lake City. I mean, so your soccer especially is now drawing, and it's, with the enrollment the way it is in Coeur d'Alene, you can tend to choose where you want to go. I think it's a place you can win. I mean, the facilities are great. There's athletes in the school. There's kids that can play. So, I mean, if you're a coach, just kind of going on my soapbox of football, it can be a place that you can go play and win, especially with the history that's there for that program. I mean, Coach Troxel had himself an absolute machine for, 15, 20 years. And, so it'll be interesting to see who they bring in. And I'd love to see them hit a home run higher and bring somebody in that turns that program around. Because competitive Lake City and a competitive Coeur d'Alene with those Lewis and Post Fall teams, that's just good for football in the state of Idaho.
A lot of good juice there in the IEL for sure. All right, 3 final notes, I promise, and then we'll get out of here.
Go ahead.
Okay. First note is last night.
No more movie reviews. Yeah, sorry.
No, you're good. We're not going to do a show next week. It's the holidays. It's going to be.
I'm broadcasting. Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to be broadcasting. It's going to be just a nice week off between Christmas and New Year's for us. There won't be that much going on to recap necessarily. So,
sure.
We're going to take next week off for the holidays, come back with the new year. Okay, so 2 games I wanted to highlight from last night. 1 boys, 1 girls. Girls basketball, Prairie defeats Potlatch. This was a game that was supposed to be played on Saturday. There was, as happens this time of year, sickness ran through Prairie. And in a small school like that, especially, it can wipe out, a good chunk of your basketball team. So Prairie had to postpone a couple of games last week, including a game on Saturday with Potlatch. They said, by Monday, we should be better. So they played last night and Prairie wins, but that's not the lead. The lead is Kristin Wemhoff, a triple-double, 17 points, 11 assists, 10 steals.
Have yourself a night. Yeah, that's awesome. So, no, great job. And like I said, I like that Prairie girls team this year. I think that they brought back a lot of pieces, obviously, from that state runner-up team last year. But, Wemhoff she's the best player in the conference, in my opinion, obviously. But to see the triple-double come from that's the unlikely combination, assist, steal, points. Usually it's points, rebounds, and then either steals, blocks, or something like that. But that's have yourself a game. That's awesome.
Yeah. So congratulations to Kristin Wemhoff and the Prairie Pirates. And then there was a boys game last night. Lakeland played Timberlake, and I ended up watching quite a bit of this game. It was pretty entertaining. It was a back and forth affair. Basically, it's tied 72-all. There's about 15 seconds left. Lakeland has the ball. They set up a little play for Scotty Hawking. He catches it at the right elbow, lets it fly, and goes through the net as time expires. And then, it just gets mobbed by his teammates. And so Lakeland wins 74-72 on basically a buzzer beater from Scotty Hawking. Way to go.
Yeah. So shoot or shoot, man. Give him he got the green light, pulled the trigger. That's a good win for the Hawks. And, like I said, and that Timberlake team we talked about at the beginning of the year, Timberlake and Bonners Ferry, it's going to be interesting to see how things turn out in the IML with only a 2-team league. And then especially with Bonners Ferry on the girls' side too, Bonners Ferry got a pretty tough rash of injuries there the last couple weeks. So it'll be interesting to see how things kind of turn up in that 3A side of things. But a good win for Lakeland. I think they kind of needed that win to right the ship a little bit. That'd been kind of listing a little bit the last few weeks.
Yes. And so then looking ahead to what's going to take place next week between Christmas and New Year's, there's a lot of action. You've got Lakeland and Bonners Ferry going over to Spokane to play in the West Valley Holiday Classic. You've got Camei going down to play in the truckstop.com tournament that's hosted by New Plymouth. You've got the Avista Holiday Tournament that we talked about in Lewiston. Sandpoint making their big trip out to the Big Island, the Punahona Invitational in Hawaii that we just couldn't scrape together the funds to go cover, Ryan. But
IdahoSports.com. Come on.
Right.
Come on, Logan, where are you at on that one with the advertising sales?
We've got
sorry. Don't throw Logan under the bus. We love Logan.
We're just burning. We're napalming all those bridges this week. Okay. we have this little mini series with Deary and Kendrick and Clearwater Valley hosting Sitka, Alaska. This is the weekend. Next week will be the week when Sitka, Alaska flies down for 3 games, boys and girls. And then we've got in boys basketball, kind of a little 3-game set between Post Falls, Coeur d'Alene, Lake City. They'll all be hosting teams from the Treasure Valley, Bishop Kelly, Eagle, and Meridian. And so our first North Idaho game nights of the year, Ryan, are going to be those 3 games. We're going to park at Post Falls High, and we'll catch every team as they come through to play Post Falls. But excuse me, I'll be on the call for the first game. Sorry, I'm so excited I can't even get it out. I'll be on the call.
We're on the edge of our seat. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll be on the call. All right. We'll be on the call for
rowdy. It's good for Christmas. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Yes. Okay, so the first game will be Tuesday night, the 27th. Post Falls will host Bishop Kelly. I will be on the call for that game, and then you're going to take the reins for the next 2. Wednesday night, the 28th, Post Falls will be hosting
Meridian.
Yes,
the last game. Yeah, Meridian and then Eagle, or is it Eagle then Meridian?
Let me double check. I don't want to give you.
I know. I'm confused now.
Okay, it's Eagle. It's Eagle.
Then Meridian.
And then Thursday, the 29th at 1 p.m. It's a day game, so Meridian can get home in a decent hour. It'll be Meridian against Post Falls. But all 3 of those boys basketball games will be for you. Video coverage on IdahoSports.com.
Yeah, you can catch those games with Brandon Fury and myself. We'll be on the call for those ones. So looking forward to that. And Brandon loves basketball, so I think this is going to be a good little tandem, him and I doing the games this season coming up, especially down the stretch towards playoffs. But yeah, and then I'm excited for the month of January. I'm looking forward to that schedule. So there's going to be some juicy bits in that one.
Yeah, stay tuned to IdahoSports.com. Across the top of the homepage, you'll see a tab called Game Streams. You can click on that to see what we have planned in terms of broadcasts into the new year. So, all right, we went a little long, but that's okay because we're not doing a show next week. Ryan, Merry Christmas. Happy New Year.
Merry Christmas to you as well. Yeah, and safe travels on your way up here. So, because I know you're going to be house hunting and all that fun stuff. So hopefully that works out well for you. We're going to turn the heat on for you on Sunday, and I think the weather's going to hit 40 this weekend, like the tail end of the weekend. Because if you come up tomorrow, it's going to be freezing your you know what, snowballs off. Yeah.
Oh man, we are towing that line today. We are towing that line.
What's Paul gonna do? Dock my pay?
Oh, you know what the nice thing is? We start the new year with a fresh slate. So, you know.
Yeah, maybe a new broadcaster.
Send in your applications to no. We're just kidding.
Yeah, message editor at IdahoSports.com.
Right. All right. Well,
yeah, Merry Christmas, brother.
Yeah.
Merry Christmas to everybody out there. Too.
Yeah, Merry Christmas to everybody that tunes in each week. We will see you the first week of January, the new year. So Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and we'll see you in 2023 on the North Idaho Prepcast on IdahoSports.com.